Hey guys, tonight we're slipping past the grand double doors, the velvet drapes and the polished marble floors, into a place few guests ever knew existed. You're not a visitor tonight. You're not even a distant cousin. You're staff. And your world starts just behind the drawing room, down a narrow hallway that smells faintly of damp wool and stewed cabbage. There's no fanfare where you're headed. No gold-framed portraits or sunlit solariums. Just a door. A plain, stiff door. It groans on its hinges as you push it open, and instantly the entire house changes. Gone is the elegance. The floor turns from gleaming parquet to bare stone. The light shifts too. Duller, yellowed, gaslit. And the air? Heavy. Still. A bit too warm from the kitchen furnace, and full of things no one upstairs wants to think about. Ash, sweat, cabbage, and sometimes worse. You're inside the servants' quarters now. And here's the reality check. You'll work 12 to 16 hours today, but you'll be expected to move like a shadow. Never heard, rarely seen, and if someone from upstairs spots your apron from the corner of their eye, that's your fault, not theirs. All right, before you get too cozy, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe. But only if your heart says yes. And hey, drop your location and what time it is where you're listening from. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from as we wander back in time together. Dim the lights, get that fan going for some background vibes, and let's chill into tonight's little adventure. You shuffle forward, and the hallway tightens. It wasn't designed for comfort, just efficiency. A wall of tarnished bells rattles to your left, each one labelled for a different room in the house. Drawing room, nursery, his lordship's study. And beside them, coiled cords snake upward through the walls, waiting for a tug from upstairs that will summon you like a servant in a play. Only this isn't a play. It's your life now. You haven't even reached your bunk yet. That's 4 more corridors away. But your first stop, before you're even allowed to breathe as off-duty, is the scullery. It's late, almost 11. The family's dinner lasted 4 courses too long, and now, here you are, up to your elbows in plates with dried-on trifle and gravy smears that could fossilise if you blink too long. Over your shoulder, a footman whispers something about the butler's wine stash. Don't take the bait. He's been caught pinching once already, and the housekeeper has eyes like a kestrel. She's likely already heard the cork shift from her room 2 floors up. You drag your rag across the last plate, stack it, and finally sneak your way down the tight, low hallway that leads to the sleeping quarters. Your steps echo on the worn brick floor. Not because you're making noise, but because the quiet is absolute. Then comes your first real obstacle, the back staircase. It's a death trap. Narrow as a chimney flue, steep as regret. The stairs curve like a corkscrew and each one creaks differently. Step wrong and you'll wake the entire floor. And trust me, no one will thank you for it. Worse yet, the entire stair is covered in a brown felt runner held down by brass rods, just polished enough to make you slip. At the top is a low door with a black iron latch. The hinges squeal like a dying mouse. You curse them silently every night. But they never get oiled, because oil costs money. And you don't. Inside, the servant dorms smell like starch and sleep. 6 bunks, 1 coal stove, a cracked wash basin, and that one terrifying hairbrush someone swears belonged to the last maid who disappeared. You slip into your assigned bed, straw-filled, rough-blanketed, and permanently shaped like someone else's back. But you made it. The door behind the drawing room swallowed you whole, and you've landed here, in a place no guest will ever speak of. But the house can't function without. You lie there, staring up at the wooden beams, trying not to think about the draught creeping in through the cracked window pane above your head. You'd close it, but it's been stuck since the frost last December, and no one's come to fix it. Because no one fixes things down here unless the family notices from upstairs. And they never do. You hear it then, the distant ting of a bell. One of the hallway bells. Maybe the library. You hold your breath, hoping it's not yours. A shuffle. A groan. It's Elsie, dragging her boots off her bunk. She mutters a curse under her breath and grabs her shawl. The bell rings again. Slightly faster now, impatient. She's halfway down the stairs before the rest of you even blink. The bells rule everything. They're connected by a maze of pulleys and wires hidden inside the walls, hundreds of feet of them. When a cord is tugged upstairs, a corresponding bell rings downstairs, and a little brass tag swings forward to show where it came from. Some newer houses even have levers that reset themselves, like some kind of magic trick. But not here. Not in this place. You've already memorized the bells by sound. The drawing room bell is sharp and quick. The nursery bell wobbles like a question. And the study bell, your least favourite, has a slow, miserable clang that somehow sounds like disapproval. You swear it judges you. And if the bell rings more than twice, someone's angry. You'll find that out the hard way. You try to roll over and get a few hours of sleep before morning starts, but it's hard. The mattress pokes through in all the wrong places. The ticking of the mantel clock 2 rooms over is loud enough to make you want to throw a boot at it. But you only own one good pair, and you'll need those come dawn. You close your eyes. But your mind drifts back to when you first entered through that servant's door, so discreetly placed beside the tradesman's entrance that guests often mistake it for a broom closet. It was raining. You remember that. And your best frock was clinging to your knees with mud. The butler didn't look up from his papers when he handed you your first chore list. No welcome, no name used, just take that bucket down to the scullery and mind the copper pans. That's when it hit you. You weren't a person here. You were a cog. No guest would ever imagine the architecture of this house was split in two. The grand staircase is for family and guests. The servants' stairs, narrow and hidden behind panelling, are for everyone else. Even the hallways are separate. Maids' passages behind the walls, kitchen tunnels below, attics above that no one ever climbs unless forced. You once found a door that led to nowhere, a brick wall behind it. No one explained it. No one wanted to. The house has secrets, and so do the people in it. The maids whisper that the lady of the house had the door sealed after one of the housemaids tried to run away that way, clutching silver cutlery in her skirts and a letter from the master in her pocket. But that's just a story. Or maybe it's not. No one asks questions down here. You're drifting now. The bell doesn't ring again. The hallway goes quiet. Someone starts to snore. The old mattress shifts beneath you like a sack of uneven flour. You try to ignore the draft on your ankles. Tomorrow will come with scuttles of coal, soap that burns your hands, and scolding glances if your apron isn't straight. But for now, the door is closed. You're behind the drawing room, unseen. And for just a few hours, you don't have to move. You wake before the sun. Not because you want to, and certainly not because someone knocked politely at your door with a cup of tea. No, it's the clatter of the boot scraper outside, followed by a low muttering, likely Thomas, the underfootman, who always talks to himself when he's still half dreaming. The room is black, save for the weak glow of embers in the stove and the faint outline of breath in the air. It's cold, colder than it should be indoors. You fumble blindly for your stockings, still damp from yesterday. The others begin to stir, a few coughs, one sneeze. The creak of a bunk as someone lurches upright too fast. No one speaks. The day hasn't officially begun yet. Talking before lacing your boots is a minor sin. Downstairs you're expected by 5, not dressed and strolling in at 5, working at 5. So you throw on your apron, tuck the loose hair under your cap, and slip out into the corridor, trying not to bump the walls or knock over the mop that someone left leaning against the door frame. The scullery is always the first place to warm up. Not in a cosy way, but in the way a furnace room does. The fire's been banked low overnight, and it's your job to stoke it. You grab the poker and work quickly, trying not to breathe in the ash that puffs out. Sparks leap. The copper pot above the fire still holds last night's dishwater, grey and greasy, with a suspicious carrot bobbing in it like it's given up. Coal first. You haul a full scuttle from the yard, nearly breaking your back in the process, and dump it beside the range. Your arms already ache, and the sun's still hiding behind London's smoggy horizon. Next, grates. You kneel in front of the iron fireplace in the morning room, scraping out the cinders into a bucket. Your hands are black by the third grate. Your knees are soaked by the fifth. And all the while you're listening, always listening for any creak above, any sudden ring of a bell, any hissed voice from behind a curtain saying, "She's late." Because if you are late, even by 2 minutes, you'll find the housekeeper waiting beside the stairs, arms crossed, lips pursed. She won't shout. That's not her way. She'll just record it. And when reference letters come around, that entry won't vanish. You rub your eyes. They sting from the coal dust. You haven't even had tea yet. But you keep going. Through the library, the study, the dining room, cleaning each grate, resetting the kindling, making sure every room looks as though no one has ever set foot inside. That's the strange thing about your job. You're constantly cleaning up evidence of life, only to vanish again like a ghost. By the time you finish the grates and return to the scullery, Elsie's scrubbing vegetables. There's a pile of leeks on the table and a distinct smell of damp earth. The cook hasn't arrived yet, but her presence is already felt. The knives are laid out. The chopping board wiped. No one dares to leave it otherwise. Cook once threw a cleaver just to make a point, and it embedded itself in the pantry door where it stayed for a week. No one removed it. It became a kind of warning sign. Someone taps the big clock in the hallway. 5:30. Which means your next task is due. Polishing the family's boots. You trudge to the boot room, where leather shoes of every size and shape await. Men's, ladies', children's, all lined up like obedient pets. You kneel once again. Your rag smells of stale vinegar and beeswax. You breathe it in, and the scent becomes part of your morning. The sun has yet to rise. But you've already lived what most folks would call a full day. The boots tell you more about the family than any conversation ever could. His lordship's boots are heavy, square-toed, and always faintly damp, as if he's been walking somewhere he shouldn't. You once found a smear of stable mud on the inside rim, even though he claims to abhor horses. Her ladyship's are delicate, with satin bows and soles that never touch the street. You polish them gently, with a different cloth, and always wrap the buckles in tissue so they don't tarnish too quickly. The children's shoes are the worst, scuffed beyond hope, dried sugar crusted near the toes. One pair has a bent heel that keeps tearing your rag. You curse under your breath and glance over your shoulder, just in case someone heard. Because even down here, the walls have ears. Boot polishing leads into another task, laying the morning trays. Her ladyship takes tea with milk, no sugar. The master prefers black coffee, which must be hot enough to scald your fingers through the china. You prepare them both in silence, stacking biscuits just so, folding napkins with corners sharp enough to cut. You carry the trays upstairs one by one, carefully, always carefully, because the stairs may be narrow, but the consequences of a dropped saucer are massive. Back in the kitchen, cook has arrived. You know she's in before you see her. The temperature rises by 10 degrees. Her footsteps are thunder, and she smells, curiously, of nutmeg and menace. She gives you a nod, which is rare, and begins issuing orders like a general. Someone's chopping parsley too loud. Someone else didn't skim the fat properly. One girl dropped a spoon yesterday and is still getting glares for it. You chop onions until your eyes burn. You wash pots so large you could sleep inside them. And all the while, the house above you slowly wakes, oblivious to the frantic ballet below. By 7 o'clock, the rest of the maids have scattered into their own little storms of activity. One's dressing the youngest daughter. Another is sweeping the grand staircase with a silent broom. You, however, are in the nursery, laying out the children's toys in exactly the same order as yesterday, because routine apparently promotes moral behaviour. You've been told that your work matters, that it keeps the household running smoothly, but no one ever thanks you, not really. The closest anyone came was when the young master sneezed and said "bless you," not realising you were behind the curtain polishing the fireplace tools. The day has officially begun now. You can hear the grand clock in the hall strike 8. The drawing room doors open. Breakfast is served. You, of course, won't eat until much later, if there's bread left, if the cook's in a forgiving mood, if someone didn't take your corner of the scullery table already. You take a moment to lean against the wall outside the breakfast room, careful not to smudge the paint with your apron. The sunlight finally spills through the upper windows, golden and grand, but it doesn't reach you. You're in the shadows again, just where they want you. Still, for a brief second, you allow yourself to enjoy that sliver of quiet. The moment before everything gets loud, before someone calls your name in the wrong tone, before the bell rings again, because it always does, and when it does, you'll run. Boots shining, apron crisp, smile pinned on like a brooch. Because that's the job. Even if you haven't slept more than 4 hours, even if your fingers are raw, even if you already feel tomorrow's aches in your spine, you keep moving. You always do. Down, down you go again, this time into the kitchen. But really, it's not a kitchen, not the kind your listeners would imagine. This isn't some bright, open farmhouse hearth with laughter and crusty bread cooling on the sill. No, this is the underworld. It's hot, not warm, suffocating. The walls sweat. The ceiling drips. There are 5 fireplaces and 6 ovens all burning at once, belching heat like iron dragons. And in the centre of it all stands Cook, red-faced and formidable, wielding her ladle like a warhammer. You're not even fully through the door before she calls out, "Don't just stand there, where's the stock pot?" And you're off again, darting between cauldrons and fire grates, dodging the boy with a milk pail and the girl carrying 4 trays of oysters at once. This is the belly of the house, the place where every delicate plate of aspic and every silver dome roast begins its life in grease and flame. You find the stock pot still bubbling from yesterday, filled with bones, turnip peels, and a chicken foot that stares at you with quiet judgment. You skim the scum from the surface and strain it through a cloth, just as Cook taught you. One slip and she'll make you start again. You don't want that. No one wants that. Behind you, someone knocks over a basket of potatoes. A sharp curse follows, then a slap. Not from Cook, but from Mrs. Wainscott, the scullery matron who runs her side of the kitchen like a boot camp. You feel the tension crackle in the air. Everyone here is too hot, too tired, too proud to say it, but we're one undercooked pigeon away from total mutiny. You take a moment, just a breath, beside the cold pantry door. It's the only place in the whole basement that feels like winter. You lean your forehead against the wood. Cool. Blessedly cool. Until someone yells, "Duck," and a pan goes flying past your shoulder. Not at you, thank heavens, but close enough to count as a near-death experience. You get back to work, peeling carrots, stirring sauce, sharpening knives. You make a paste of breadcrumbs and bone marrow for the stuffed quail later, and try not to think about what that smells like after 6 hours at room temperature. There's a jug of vinegar in the corner with an eel in it. No one dares move it. Some say Cook put it there 10 years ago and the eel still blinks once in a while. You wonder if you've gone mad, or if this is just what the kitchen does to people. At exactly 11:10, the kitchen boy hauls in the fish delivery, wrapped in Hessian sacks, wet and leaking. You help him sort them. Haddock, sole, turbot, a few lobsters so angry they snap at your fingers. You carry one to the boiling pot and hold it above the water. It thrashes. You hesitate. "Don't flinch," Cook says behind you, watching. They can smell fear. You don't ask how she knows that. Instead, you drop it in and try not to hear the hiss. The smell changes once the fish starts boiling. The buttery air thickens with brine and steam, and the entire kitchen becomes a foggy, slippery chaos of sizzle and shouting. You wipe your brow with the edge of your sleeve. Your apron's already streaked with butter, stock, and something pink you'd rather not identify. At the far end of the kitchen, the spit boy is still turning the roast. He's been there for hours, his arms trembling with each turn of the crank as a side of mutton rotates over open flame. The grease drips down and hisses on the coals, releasing clouds of smoke that roll into your lungs whether you want them or not. Someone offers him a crust of bread dipped in dripping, which he accepts like a starving sailor. You haven't seen him blink once. You look up and spot one of the copper pans hanging just slightly off-centre. It's polished to a blinding shine, part of your job, of course, and your warped reflection stares back at you. Soot-smeared cheeks, wild hair under your cap and eyes that look older than you feel. You're still staring when the door slams open and the butler strides in. His black waistcoat is spotless, of course. His shoes click with authority, and he doesn't so much as glance at you. "Lady Marshfield will be dining at 1, he announces, with guests, 3 additional covers, no onion, no game, no pepper. He pauses, and no delay. Cook doesn't flinch. "We'll serve at 12:58. You have no idea how she manages that, nor how she remembers every food allergy and family feud through menus alone. But somehow she does. The rest of the kitchen turns into a storm of motion. Cook's assistant begins layering a dish of poached eggs and creamed spinach with terrifying speed. The sauce girl is frantically whisking something that smells suspiciously of brandy and lemons. And you're tasked with plating the oysters. They arrive on a bed of shaved ice served on delicate shells as thin as paper. You balance each one like a miniature treasure and sprinkle them with vinegar and minced shallot, just as Cook showed you last week. You hated oysters until you started handling them. Now you think you might still hate them, but with a kind of respect. There's a rule you've learned in the kitchen. Don't taste with your mouth, taste with your eyes. The family upstairs doesn't care if the sauce is too sharp or the meat's too pink. They care about the symmetry, the drama, the illusion of effortlessness. Your fingers are numb from holding the silver tongs so delicately. You shake them out when no one's looking. Finally, with seconds to spare, the dishes are assembled, wiped, garnished, and arranged on a silver tray that nearly glows. Cook gives one nod, and the footman sweeps in like a magician to carry it all away. The kitchen exhales. There's no cheer, no congratulations, just the low clatter of ladles being dropped into the wash basin, and the hiss of a kettle beginning to boil again. You sit on an overturned crate and stretch your legs. A drop of something, oil, soup, lobster juice, hits your forehead from the low ceiling above and you don't even flinch. From somewhere upstairs you hear the faint chime of silver on china. It's peaceful, polished, silent. No one there will ever imagine the noise, the heat, or the burns behind their midday meal. No one ever does. The laundry room is where dreams go to drown. It's tucked behind the scullery, through a warped wooden door that sticks in summer and freezes shut in winter. You push it open with your shoulder and step into the steam. It hits you like a wall, dense, wet, and stinking faintly of lye, sweat, and damp wool. You can't see more than a few feet ahead, but you don't need to. You know this room by touch now. The scalding hot copper boiler on the left, the battered mangle on the right, and the row of long blackened tables where sheets are scrubbed within an inch of their lives. Someone's already singing, a low, tuneless hum coming from Mary, the washerwoman. She's worked here for 17 years and has the arms of a dockhand and the patience of a saint. She's stirring a vat of linens with a giant wooden paddle, as calmly as if she were mixing porridge. You join the others at the bench, grab a bar of yellow soap and start scrubbing. The rhythm is brutal. Rub, twist, rinse, slap. Rub, twist, rinse, slap. Your knuckles crack open before the hour's out. The lye bites at the skin between your fingers. You flinch. No one else does. Because this isn't the first time, and it won't be the last. You've barely started when someone passes you a bloodied handkerchief. No explanation. You just nod and begin working on it like it's mustard or ink. Stains tell stories down here, but you don't ask questions. It's not your place. The air is so thick it makes your dress cling to your back, and sweat gathers under your cap. You wipe your forehead with your wrist and only succeed in smearing soap across your temple. The heat is relentless. The boiler hisses like an angry cat, steam curls up the brick walls, and your lungs feel like they're breathing soup. Then comes the mangle. It's an iron monster, with 2 heavy rollers and a crank so stiff it takes both hands to turn. The sheets must be fed through slowly, carefully. Too fast and they wrinkle. Too slow, and you'll be here all day. You work the crank with aching arms, watching the fabric emerge flattened, heavy, and still steaming. Once, last year, a girl's fingers got caught between the rollers. They had to use a poker to pry them out. She didn't come back the next day. Mary hands you a basket of damp lace collars, her ladyship's wardrobe favourites. These require special care, washed by hand in rose water, pressed with a cool iron, and pinned in a perfect oval shape to dry. You almost lost a week's pay once for folding one incorrectly. Her ladyship noticed before breakfast and demanded a new maid with proper training. You narrowly survived by blaming the starch. You carry the collars to the drying room, really just a low-ceilinged attic with lines strung between wooden beams. It smells of mildew and something faintly sour. You duck your head and hang the lace with shaking fingers, praying no soot from the chimney drifts this way today. Outside, the world is turning golden. Somewhere, someone is clipping roses. Somewhere, someone is sipping tea from a china cup so thin the sunlight glows through it. Down here, your hands are raw, your hair is damp, and you can no longer tell where the steam ends and your own breath begins, and it's only just past noon. You step carefully across the laundry room floor, slippery from soap runoff and the constant drip, drip, drip of the overhead drying rack. Your boots squelch faintly with each step, and you pretend not to notice. Everyone pretends. Next up, the ironing. It sounds innocent enough, doesn't it? Just ironing. But here, it's an ordeal involving heavy steel plates heated over open flames, scorched fingertips, and the constant threat of blistering steam rising from still damp fabric. You select your tools, a thick rag for grip, a block of beeswax to smooth the sole plate, and a slab of soapstone used for testing the temperature of the iron. There's no dial, no electric coil, just fire and instinct. Too cold, and it won't press. Too hot, and you'll brand the linen like a cattle hide. You press a practice curl of muslin against the iron. It sizzles faintly. Just right. You begin. Napkins first. Easy. Then pillowcases. Her ladyship's frilled nightgowns follow. Yards of fine lawn cotton that crease if you even look at them sideways. You move the iron in long, slow strokes, counting in your head to keep your pressure steady. 1, 2, 3. Steam escapes from the collar. You keep your hand still. Behind you, Mary is cursing in Irish. One of the irons has cracked, leaving a black smear on a cravat. It'll have to be rewoven, if not replaced. The butler will not be pleased. A sharp knock comes from the doorframe. 2 quick taps, then a pause. It's the signal for tea break. Tea, of course, means different things depending on which floor you live on. Upstairs, it's served on china with sponge cake and candied lemon peel. Down here, it's thick, tannic, and tastes vaguely of metal. The sugar bowl is usually empty, the milk jug often sour, but it's hot, and right now, that's enough. You take your cup and lean against the far wall, close to the open window. A rare bit of fresh air, if you can call it that. Through the gap, you catch a glimpse of the garden beyond. Bright flowers, a white bench, a child's ball abandoned under the hedge. You let yourself imagine, just for a minute, what it would be like to sit on that bench in a clean dress, your hands unburnt, the sun on your face. A silly thought, dangerous even, so you crush it. The break ends with the rattle of the drying rack descending overhead. It creaks and sways, revealing more linens ready for sorting. You pass Elsie a bundle and catch her eye. She's flushed, panting slightly, and her sleeves are damp past the elbows. "Half day soon," she whispers with a grin. You nod, though yours isn't for another 10 days. Still, the idea of it, of 2 free hours and a crusty pie from the bakehouse, keeps you going. It always does. Back to work. The iron's gone cool. You reheat it over the flame, watching the metal darken and glow. Another round of pressing, folding, stacking. Napkin, napkin, collar, cuff. Then something unexpected. A blood stain on a child's chemise. Old brownish red, scrubbed once already, but not enough. You hesitate. Mary glances over. "Finger in the nursery," she mutters. "Fell on the step." Then she adds, without looking up, "Or so they say." You nod again, but something about the shape of the smear makes your stomach twist. You keep ironing, because no one down here asks, and no one tells. You finish the stack just as the hallway bell rings once. It's the footman, summoning fresh tablecloths for the afternoon tea. You gather the warm linens, cradle them in your arms like a baby, and climb the narrow stairs, away from the steam into the cooler halls above. But your fingers still sting, your dress clings, and the heat of the laundry room stays with you long after you leave it behind. She moves without a sound, not because she's silent by nature, but because silence is part of her uniform. You hear her only when she wants to be heard, and she rarely does. She glides like a shadow down the carpetless corridor, her black bombazine dress rustling ever so faintly like dry leaves. You freeze when she passes. Everyone does. She's the housekeeper, not a maid, not a matron. She stands above the fray, just beneath the butler and far above you. If this house were a kingdom, the butler might be its prime minister, but she is its spy master. You see her now standing in the housekeeper's room, where no one else dares linger. It smells of ink, starch, and lemon oil, clean in a way that borders on menacing. Her desk is immaculate. Her keys hang in neat rows beside her chair, each labelled, each polished. They open every cabinet, every storeroom, every drawer where secrets might be tucked, and make no mistake, she knows every secret. She has a ledger with every name, every slip, every lateness, every frayed hem or forgotten napkin. If you wore your boots on the main staircase last Thursday, she knows. If you smuggled leftover goose to the alley cat, she knows. If you dared speak to the second footman after dark, oh, she absolutely knows. She doesn't scold, she writes. And what she writes may one day cost you your next position. Today, she beckons you into her room. Just a nod. You obey, of course. She hands you a bundle, fresh linen covers for the drawing room settees, and gives a single instruction. These must be changed before the guests arrive. Do be sure to lift the cushions this time. You flush. You forgot last time. There were crumbs. The lady noticed. It's been recorded, you're sure of it. As you take the bundle, you glance down at her desk. For just a second. There's a tiny ivory portrait of a girl about your age tucked into the corner. No frame, no dust, just quietly placed facing her chair. You've never seen the housekeeper speak of family, and no one ever asks. But that picture has sat in that same corner for years, weathered at the edges, the ink slightly faded. Some say it was her daughter, some say a sister, some say nothing. She never comments, only shifts the photo once each day to keep the sunlight off it. You climb the stairs toward the drawing room, linen bundle in hand, mind racing. You wonder how the housekeeper became what she is. She wasn't born to it. No one is. Perhaps she started in a scullery like you. Perhaps she burned herself on the same irons, scrubbed the same blood from the same shirts. But somewhere along the way she learned how to rise. They say she once served in a duke's household, that she carried messages between rooms like a trusted courier, never opening her mouth unless asked. That's the trick. Speak less, see more, remember everything, and if that's true, then this job isn't just about clean linens and polished brass. It's about survival and, maybe, just maybe, power. You finish changing the linen covers in the drawing room, carefully lifting each cushion, brushing away crumbs, smoothing every wrinkle until the furniture looks like it's never been touched at all. You don't sit, of course. No servant ever sits in this room unless commanded. Even the air seems to frown on it. As you replace the last pillow, you glance up and catch your reflection in the long mirror above the hearth. You look like a ghost. Pale, smudged, eyes heavy. And yet the lines of your apron are sharp, your hair is pinned tight, and your posture remains correct. The housekeeper would approve. Back downstairs, the housekeeper passes you again in the corridor. She doesn't speak, but you notice her glance, brief but deliberate, toward your apron hem. You look down. A smear of soot from the grates. Barely visible, but she spotted it. Of course she did. She disappears around the corner, keys clinking faintly like wind chimes in a storm. That sound, the key ring, rules more than just cabinets. It represents authority, access. She's the only woman allowed into every room without permission, including the master's study and the family's private quarters. The butler might manage the wine cellar and the formal table settings, but she manages lives. There's a story the junior maids whisper at night, that once a lady of the house tried to dismiss her over a broken vase. The housekeeper packed her bags in silence and walked out the front door before anyone could stop her. By dawn, the entire household was in disarray. Drawers unlocked, stores miscounted, maids crying over who got which key. The lady sent a carriage that very day to beg her return. She came back by evening, not smiling, just returned. No one ever questioned her again. You wonder if that story is true, or if it's one of those myths that makes her seem larger than life, part woman, part phantom. Later, you find yourself near her office again, delivering a bottle of vinegar and fresh cloths. She's writing in her ledger, and the scratch of her pen is the only sound in the corridor. You glance down. She's noting dates, initials, times. You spot your name. Just a glimpse. Next to it, a number. 7? You hold your breath. But she doesn't look up. Just finishes the line, closes the book and says softly, "That will be all." You nod and retreat. The rest of the day passes like ink on linen, stains you try to scrub away, even though they always leave a shadow. By the evening, You're in the servants' hall folding napkins into swans for tomorrow's luncheon. The butler's voice echoes somewhere behind you, booming and polished, giving orders like an admiral. But the housekeeper? She glides past, drops a glance toward the candle that's burning too low, and, without a word, someone rushes to trim the wick. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet woman with the keys, the records, and the stare that makes you fix your collar without knowing why. Sometimes it's the one who sees everything and writes it all down. There's a sound you'll never forget once you've worked below stairs. The bell. It rings without warning, sometimes sharp, sometimes slow, but always clear, always urgent. It cuts through walls, through steam, through conversation, and once it rings, you move. The bellboard is mounted on the servants' hallway wall, just opposite the pantry. It's a polished slab of mahogany with brass labels, one for each room upstairs, and a dangling wire behind each, connected to pulleys and cords that snake invisibly through the house. Some grand homes had electric systems. This one still runs on string and tension, a living creature of rope and brass. You pass it now on your way through the corridor. The drawing-room bell gives a delicate ting. Its label swings forward. You don't hesitate. You're already halfway up the back staircase, skirts gathered, breath held. But here's the thing. You're not allowed to use the main stairs. Ever. They're carpeted wide and curved like a theatre entrance. They're for guests, for ladies and lords, for those with titles and time. You use the back stairs. Always. Even if it means carrying a silver tray sideways to squeeze past a turn. Even if it means climbing 4 flights instead of 2. Even if you fall, and many do. The walls are narrow here, almost claustrophobic. The banister is smooth from generations of hurried fingers. Your shoes scuff the same grooves every servant before you carved into these steps, like invisible footprints echoing up the wall. You reach the second-floor landing and pause beside the service door. It's painted to blend with the wainscoting, nearly invisible unless you know where to look. A small latch, a faint creak, and then you're behind the wall. The maid's passageway is barely shoulder-wide. The wallpaper's older here, peeling slightly. Dust gathers in corners where no broom fits. You walk softly, your own breath loud in your ears. A peephole glints in the panelling to your right. They're all over the house. Tiny cutouts, meant for footmen to see when the drawing room is empty, or to check if a guest has finished his brandy. You've peered through one once, only once. The image still lingers, her ladyship in her powder gown, slumped in a chair, eyes red, a letter in her lap. You backed away before she saw you. You never mentioned it. You still wonder what the letter said. You knock once at the drawing-room door. A pause. Then a voice. Enter. You glide in. Eyes down, posture straight, tray in hand. You set the tea on the table beside her ladyship and vanish again before she finishes her sigh. That's the rule. Deliver. Retreat. Speak only when addressed. Back in the passageway, the silence hugs you again. It's almost a relief. You return the tray, and as you pass the bellboard, you notice something strange. One of the bells, the nursery, is swinging slightly. Not ringing, just moving. No one's pulled the cord. The wire must have shifted. Or maybe something tugged it upstairs. Either way, you stare for a second too long. The housekeeper walks by and sees you staring. She says nothing, just taps the brass frame once, and the bell stops swinging. You move away from the bellboard, back to your tasks, but that swinging bell lingers in your mind like the taste of something half bitter, half sweet. You've worked in this house long enough to know one thing. Bells don't move on their own. Still, you have linens to fold and shoes to brush. You push the thought aside. Later that evening, you're assigned to clean the upstairs hallway carpets. Again, using the back stairs and never ever letting your boots touch the velvet runners of the main hall. The carpets are thick with dust and invisible debris, which you must lift with a brush no wider than your hand. Vacuum machines exist in other houses, newer, richer ones. But here, it's all elbow grease and quiet swearing. Halfway through the task, you spot something curious. A peephole, this time set lower than usual, at knee level in the wall near the study. You've passed this corridor dozens of times but never noticed it. The paper is newer here, glued tighter, the seam more deliberate. You crouch. But before you dare look through, the hallway fills with the unmistakable sound of double bells, the harsh, urgent kind that signals both the drawing room and the study have rung at once. It's impossible. No one's meant to pull two chords at the same time, but there it is. Both labels swinging, both wires taut, the whole board rattling faintly like a nervous breath. You freeze, then you run. First to the study, where his lordship is pacing in his slippers, barking for a port refill, then to the drawing room, where her ladyship looks surprised to see you. "I rang 5 minutes ago," she says coldly, as if your error were written in stone. You nod, apologise, retreat. Back at the bellboard, the butler is inspecting the wires, frowning slightly. He doesn't like mysteries. He prefers straight answers, clean lines, staff who follow orders and bells that behave themselves. Without a word, he adjusts one of the brass arms and walks off, muttering something about mechanical nonsense. You don't believe it. Not quite. Because the next morning you overhear the scullery maid whispering to Elsie. "I saw her last night, on the landing, middle of the night, just standing by the bellboard." "Who?" Elsie asks, glancing over her shoulder. "The housekeeper," the girl whispers, "just standing there, watching the bells, not moving, not blinking." They both go silent. You file that away. Another unseen thing. Another shadow in a house that thrives on silence. As the days go on, the bells keep ringing, always slightly off rhythm. Once the nursery bell rings when the children are at their grandmother's. Another time the library bell chimes, only to reveal no one inside. You try not to be superstitious, but every servant in this house knows the bells aren't just tools, they're signals of mood, of status, of danger. They tell you when to run, when to hide, when to straighten your apron and lie with a smile, and sometimes they tell you something's wrong, deeply wrong, so you move faster, you watch more closely, you keep your head down and your ears open, because the housekeeper's keys may unlock the rooms, but it's the bells that reveal the secrets. The roast is golden, the jelly glistens, the pudding steams just so. You've spent hours helping prepare the feast for the family's supper, polishing silver, slicing fruits into shapes that resemble flowers, and watching the cook mutter incantations over the gravy boat like it might summon a duke. But you don't eat this food. You don't even get to sniff it too long. You carry it upstairs, tray after tray, through narrow passages and up the service stairs, careful not to tilt or tremble. One misstep, and it's the end of the evening, and possibly the end of your employment. The drawing room doors close behind you, and with them go the scents of roasted duck, baked apple, and warm buttery rolls. You walk back down into the kitchen where you belong, and it's only then that you realise your own stomach is growling, loudly. But you wait. You always wait. Down in the scullery, the meal after the meal begins. It's not glamorous. There's no tablecloth, no centrepiece. Just a row of worn benches, a cracked table, and a few battered plates stacked beside a jar of mustard that's seen better decades. Supper for the staff is what's left, if there's anything left. Tonight you're lucky. The footman smuggled a crust of game pie and a few slices of beetroot from the sideboard. Someone else passes down the heel of a loaf, and there's a communal pot of dripping to go with it, thick, salty, and spread with a finger when knives are in short supply. You sit finally on the edge of a bench that tilts slightly to the left. Your feet ache. Your hands are raw. But this is the best part of your day. Because here, in this dim corner of the house, around a table stained with stew and soot, you can speak. Not loudly, not recklessly, but enough. Elsie makes a face after biting into something suspiciously chewy. Do you think this was once jelly? Someone snorts. The stable boy offers her a pickle as compensation. Laughter bubbles low and fragile like a stolen breath. No one's truly at ease. There's always a bell, always a footstep. But there's something comforting about eating together, even if it's scraps. The walls around you are cracked and stained. The candlelight flickers in the breeze from the coal chute, but in this moment, you feel more human than you did all day. Until the butler enters. He doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. One look from him and conversation dies. The mood collapses like a bad soufflé. He inspects the plates, half empty, half clean, and gives a small nod. Then he says, "When you finish, the hallway floor needs mopping. The lady noticed footprints." No one dares point out they're probably hers, so you nod. You rise. You gather your plate and scrape the remains into the pale-marked pig. You've never actually seen the pig, but you hope it appreciates the crusts. The dripping is nearly gone. The pie is finished, and as the last of the candle melts into a puddle of wax, the meal ends, not with a toast, but with a sigh. Still, for a few minutes it felt like supper. You mop the hallway floor in silence, dragging the damp cloth over footprints that might have been yours, or the butler's, or even her ladyship's tiny embroidered slippers. Doesn't matter. They're gone now. The marble gleams again. The house expects perfection. Later you slip back into the scullery for a proper cup of tea. Well, what passes for one? The pot is stained, the leaves reused, but it's warm, and the mug fits nicely between your sore hands. You sit near the back wall, just beneath the hooks where aprons hang like tired ghosts. You notice it then, something scuttling under the table. Not a mouse, bigger, a rat. No one screams. Of course not. This isn't the upstairs nursery where vermin are a tragedy. Down here they're part of the decor. The scullery rat has been around for months. You think it lives behind the stack of coal buckets. Some have named it, some feed it crumbs, others hiss at it when it gets too bold. It stares at you now, whiskers twitching as if to say, "We're not so different, you and I." You toss it the edge of a roll and keep sipping your tea. Elsie sits beside you, pinching her cheeks to bring back some colour. She does this before every visit upstairs, even when she's only going to deliver towels. "They like us to look lively," she says with a smirk. She pulls a tiny mirror from her apron, barely bigger than a coin, and adjusts her cap. The mirror is cracked. She says it came from the discarded box of her ladyship's old makeup. She didn't want it once it got chipped, so I did. You both laugh, quietly, and then someone mentions the nursery stew. Apparently the cook made too much, or perhaps the children didn't eat enough. Either way, there's a pot cooling on the sideboard. It's got turnips, barley, and something greyish floating in the middle. You ladle a scoop into a chipped bowl and blow gently on the steam. It tastes better than it looks, not by much, but enough. Someone else finds the tray of overbaked scones, the ones meant for tea but left in the oven too long. Hard as stones, but still edible when dunked. You each grab one, soaking them in tea until they're soft enough to chew. The butler walks past again, doesn't stop, but you all fall still until his footsteps fade. That's the thing about meals down here. They're never entirely yours. There's always a risk, a bell, a voice, a sudden order that pulls you away mid-bite. And yet, in these scraps and seconds, you learn something vital. How to survive on crumbs without ever appearing hungry. You help clear the bowls, you rinse the cups, Someone hums a lullaby no one admits knowing. And when all is clean, you pass through the scullery door and into the dim corridor that leads back to your bunk. You don't speak of the jelly that wobbled too much, or the rat that stared too long, or the stew that had an extra chew. You just carry the warmth of tea in your chest and the memory of laughter folded deep inside your apron pocket. Because down here, a shared crust is a banquet, and supper, however humble, is sacred. It starts with a glance. Not from a guest, not from the master, but from the butler. A narrow tilt of the chin, a tightening of his mouth as he watches you pour the wine just a little too fast. Again, he says later, in the pantry, voice low and edged with frost. Smooth, like water over glass. You nod. Of course you nod. You practice with an empty decanter until your wrist aches and the red liquid no longer sloshes but glides. Because in this house, hierarchy isn't just spoken, it's poured. The butler is king of the downstairs. He controls the wine, the table settings, the ceremonial rhythm of every formal meal. His waistcoat is always immaculate, his posture so erect it could balance a candlestick. He doesn't shout often, but when he does, it's because someone forgot which spoon follows the fish fork. And then there's the under-butler, the footman, the first housemaid, the scullery girls, the tweenies, all ranked and slotted like an invisible chessboard, each move rehearsed. Your position? Somewhere in the middle, low enough to be dismissed, high enough to be blamed. Today you're setting the table for luncheon, under the butler's eye. Forks exactly 1 inch from the edge. Napkin folds must resemble swans. Not birds, swans. One girl once folded them like ducks and was sent to the coal store for a week. There's a pecking order even in your tools. Silver-polished cloths go to senior maids, rags to juniors. Bread knives are polished by footmen, but carving knives only by the under-butler. No exceptions, and everyone watches everyone else. Because here's the dirty truth of the servants' quarters. When you're all at the bottom, the only direction left to punch is sideways. Elsie gets shunned for laughing too loud near the pantry. A footman gets mysteriously reassigned after being spotted sharing a pear tart with a housemaid. A single word whispered over the ironing board can stick like soot on lace. But the worst sin? Ambition. Everyone says they want to rise. No one says it out loud. That's dangerous. The girl who asked the housekeeper for an extra duty last month hasn't had a proper shift since. So you keep your eyes down. You polish. You serve. You nod. Until today. Today, the under-butler corrects your placement of the butter dish. He sighs dramatically and says, "Perhaps you're not suited to service after all." You say nothing, but something flickers in you, something small and sharp, because you were suited enough to scrub his lordship's cuff when he spilled gravy, suited enough to carry a trunk bigger than you up 3 flights of stairs last week, suited enough to lie for a guest when she came home with someone else's brooch. But no one thanks you, only notices when you misplace the spoon. Still, you hold the tray steady, you adjust the butter dish, you smile, and you say, "Is this placement correct, sir?" The under-butler pauses, his nostrils flare, and the footman behind him suppresses a smirk. The hierarchy wobbles, just slightly. You return to the scullery with the empty tray, but something's shifted. The butter dish is exactly where it should be. The napkins are folded like swans, and yet a strange tension hums beneath your skin, as if you've tapped a wire that runs through the entire house. The hierarchy has noticed you. That's not always a good thing. Elsie finds you stacking plates and nudges your elbow. "You all right?" she whispers. You nod, but she sees it too. That flicker, that glint that comes when someone is no longer content to stay where they've been placed. Because in this house, everything rests on position, not just upstairs, where titles and inheritances decide who gets the best seat at dinner, but down here, where whose hands touch silver versus soap can shape your entire future. Even your meals are ranked. Senior maids get the best bread slices. The footmen get second choice. Tweenies get crusts if anything's left. And don't even think about reaching for the good butter unless someone above you offers it first. The same rules govern where you sleep. First maids have rooms with a window. You sleep in the attic, 5 to a room, under a sloped ceiling that leaks when it rains. The water drips exactly above your pillow. You've learned to shift sideways in your sleep without waking. Promotion comes rarely and slowly, but it comes sometimes. A footman may become a valet. A housemaid might rise to parlourmaid, then to first housemaid. And if she's truly patient, she might one day carry the housekeeper's keys. But ambition must be silent. Because the moment you say, "I'd like to rise," someone else says, "She thinks she's better than us." And suddenly your bucket goes missing, your apron gets swapped, your name gets left off the tea list. Petty? Of course. But down here, power is measured in slights. You saw it last week when the second footman got a new waistcoat and the others accidentally served him salt in his tea. Or when a chambermaid confessed she could read French, and suddenly her laundry kept going missing. You've learned to play the game. You polish extra, but never faster than your superior. You stand straighter, but only when the butler isn't watching. You speak clearly, but never first. Because in this house, obedience is survival, but invisibility is power. Still, the seed is planted. That one moment at the butter dish, so small, so polite, felt like the tiniest crack in the ceiling. And you've begun to wonder what might happen if that crack widened. Back in the hall, the bell rings again. This time it's the morning room. Her ladyship left her embroidery hoop and now wants it fetched. You're sent. As you pass through the drawing room, you spot the family laughing, eating. The butler at his post, stoic and smug. The under-butler flicks his eyes toward you, just briefly. You bow your head. You move as expected, but as you walk away, you lift your chin just a fraction higher than you should, and you swear the next time you place the butter dish it will stay exactly where you set it. The bedchambers are quiet. Too quiet. There's a stillness here you don't find anywhere else in the house. Not in the clatter of the scullery, not in the thunder of the kitchen, not even in the eerie hush of the servants' corridor. This silence is cultivated, deliberate, like a greenhouse for rich people's dreams, and you are expected to tiptoe through it with the grace of a ghost. This morning, you're on bedroom duty. That means making the beds before the family rises, before anyone sees the wrinkles, the sweat on the sheets, or the crumpled nightgowns tangled like shed skin. You start with the children's rooms. They sleep like angels but leave chaos in their wake. Toys underfoot, muddy shoes on the settee. One of them has scribbled a moustache on a portrait with charcoal. Again. You clean it up, of course. Quietly. Completely. Like it never happened. Then you move on to the guest rooms. Unoccupied, yet still treated like shrines. Every pillow fluffed. Every curtain pulled at the exact same angle. You fold the counterpane halfway down, arrange the bolster just so, and sprinkle a pinch of lavender under the pillow, not because anyone will notice, but because someone might. And then comes her ladyship's bedroom. This room is different. The wallpaper here is pale green, stitched with faded roses. There's a faint scent of orange blossom and talc, and an oppressive sense of careful arrangement. The kind of room where even the dust settles in neat lines. You open the drapes exactly halfway, letting in just enough light to make the silver hairbrushes glint on the vanity. The sheets must be lifted gently, never yanked. The goosefeather mattress is fluffed with both hands, one on each side in perfect rhythm. You've been trained in the bed-making ballet. Remove the sheet, shake, tuck, smooth, repeat. And then the pillows. Pillows are sacred. There's a very specific order: bolster, firm, medium, soft, lace cover, ribbon tie, lavender pouch. You once placed them in the wrong order, and her ladyship spent the entire day with a stiff neck. Or so she claimed. You smooth her nightgown and fold it neatly at the foot of the bed. The fabric is silk, nearly transparent, embroidered at the cuffs. You've touched fabric finer than anything you'll ever wear. You've folded chemises that cost more than your yearly pay. You've also found odd things in the linens. A torn letter once smudged with ink, a small glass vial, empty. Once a locket hidden under the mattress, still warm. You never ask, you never mention it, because the rule of the bedchamber is simple. You may enter, but you must never be seen. Not just by the family, but by the room itself. No hairs left behind, no footprints on the rug. You are the ghost who comes before the waking world begins. After the lady's room, you turn to his lordship's chamber. Different again. Less floral, more leather. The smell of brandy and old books lingers in the curtains. There are cigars, tucked in a crystal tray, and yesterday's shirt still hangs from the wardrobe handle. You fetch the laundry basket. You avoid looking too closely at the stains. You catch your reflection in the wardrobe mirror. You're flushed, tired, apron dusted with down. But your hands move with practiced grace. In this room, like all others, you leave no trace, no scent, no shadow, only perfection. The clock on his lordship's dressing table ticks too loudly. You finish folding the last of his underthings, starched, monogrammed, and laid out in the precise order he prefers. Shirt, collar, cuffs, handkerchief. One step out of line and he'll call for the valet with that long-suffering sigh, the one that suggests the universe itself is inconveniencing him. You move next to the chamber pot. Yes, still in use. Not always, but often enough that you check every morning. You lift the lid with practiced indifference, pour it out at the servant's sluice, and scrub it with soap and scalding water. You're meant to do this silently, discreetly. Nobility doesn't produce waste, after all. Only staff who remove it. The irony doesn't escape you. You carry the now spotless pot back to its cabinet, and on the way pass by the lady's morning room. She's inside, sipping weak tea and reading a letter with trembling hands. Her back is to you. You pause, just briefly. Then you notice the loose hairpin on the floor. One of hers. You kneel, pick it up, and place it gently on the small writing desk without a word. She doesn't look at you, but you feel the air shift, some quiet acknowledgement, or maybe just a shared exhaustion. You retreat before she changes her mind. Down the hall, the other maids are hard at work. You catch glimpses through half-closed doors, someone airing out sheets, someone else scrubbing a slipper with a toothbrush. The upstairs is its own kind of battlefield, one fought with linen and lavender, where the enemy is dust, disorder, and being noticed. Because here's the strange truth. Your goal isn't praise, it's absence. If you do your job perfectly, no one will say a word. They'll walk into a made bed, fresh water in the jug, a ribbon tied exactly like yesterday's, and assume it all appeared by magic. That's the cruel beauty of this work. Invisibility is success. But if a pillow's out of place, if a towel's still damp, if one speck of ash is left on the hearth, you'll hear about it. The housekeeper will hear about it. And so will the next family you work for, because reputations follow servants like coal dust on cuffs. Back downstairs, you strip off your gloves and shake out your arms. They're sore from smoothing and folding, but you can't complain. The first housemaid once said that the only cure for ache is to get better at not noticing it. You pass the linen press on your way to the laundry chute. It's jammed again, stuffed with too many damp sheets. You give it a shove with your hip, hard enough to rattle the brass, and hear a whoomp as the mass drops down. You smile. Small victories. Later, when you return to your bunk, there's a single chocolate tucked beneath your pillow. A truffle. Dark, wrapped in gold foil. No note. But you know where it came from. Not her ladyship, not the butler. Probably the youngest daughter. She's done it before. Left little gifts when she thinks no one's watching. Once it was a daisy. Another time, a ribbon. You're not meant to keep them. You're supposed to report any items gifted improperly, but tonight you eat it. Because in this world where you make 20 beds before breakfast and vanish before the tea cools, a truffle is more than chocolate. It's proof that someone noticed, even if they weren't supposed to. The bathwater must be exactly 103 degrees, not 1 degree more, not one less. You check it with your elbow, the time-honoured method. If it stings, it's too hot. If it's barely warm, you start again. You've done this every morning this week. You no longer feel your elbow. Her ladyship's bath is a brass tub with porcelain lining, tucked behind a silk screen in her dressing room. You carry up kettles of hot water from the kitchen one by one, careful not to spill a drop. The hallway carpet is unforgiving. One stain, and the under-housemaid gets an earful. You set out the sponge, the rose-scented soap, and a fresh linen towel folded like a fan. Everything must appear effortless. Everything must appear as though it appeared by itself. That's the irony. Bathing is the most private thing these people do, yet it's always done with help. You knock softly at the dressing room door and receive the faintest come. You enter, eyes down, steam already curling up from the tub like whispers. Her ladyship stands by the vanity, still in her nightdress, arms bare and pale. She says nothing, just nods. You begin the process, unlacing the back of her gown. Carefully, always carefully. The fabric is silk thin and temperamental like its owner. You fold it and place it on the chair alongside her robe. Then the corset, unhooked gently, rhythmically. You don't rush. You don't speak. She steps into the bath, wincing slightly. She always winces, and always says, "Perfect temperature, whether it is or not." You stand just behind the screen, waiting. Sometimes you scrub her back if she asks. Sometimes you shampoo her hair while she closes her eyes. Today she doesn't ask for either. She just sits, soaking, her breathing slow, her gaze fixed somewhere you can't see. You've known her body longer than you've known some members of your own family. The slope of her shoulders, the mole on her hip, the faint scar on her shin she insists is from falling off a pony, though you suspect otherwise. You've buttoned her boots, you've sewn her stays, you've rinsed soap from between her toes, and yet she doesn't know your middle name. When the bath is done, you hold out the towel. She steps out, silent and dripping, and wraps herself like royalty. You help her into her robe, brush her hair if she allows. Today she does. You count each stroke, 20, 40, 60, until her scalp relaxes beneath your hand. Then she says, in that light voice that always comes just before the dismissal, "That will be all." You curtsy and leave. Downstairs you wash out the sponge and hang the towels to dry. The steam still clings to your dress. You smell like roses and salt water. You don't know if the scent is hers or yours anymore. You're still thinking of her silence when someone calls you to the master's room. He's requested assistance, and it's not even noon. You hesitate at the threshold of the master's chamber. The door is ajar, as if left that way deliberately. The hallway behind you is silent, too silent. You knock once, soft as a sigh. No answer. Still, you step inside. He's seated in his armchair, back to the fireplace, legs crossed, waistcoat unbuttoned. A book rests face down on the table beside him. There's a decanter, half empty, a glass untouched. He doesn't look up right away. When he does, his eyes are bloodshot. Not angry, just tired in that brittle, aristocratic way that often leads to someone else being punished. "I need a fresh collar," he says. "This one's stiff." You glance at the collar. It is stiff, because it's starched to perfection, exactly as he prefers it. But you don't say that. You nod, collect the shirt, and step toward the linen press to retrieve another. Wait. You pause. He stands. Slowly. Too slowly. He approaches, and you keep your eyes down. You know this drill. You've heard of it. Everyone has. "I say," he murmurs, and his voice is soft now, almost curious. "How long have you been with us?" You answer evenly. 18 months, sir." He takes a step closer. "You do very good work. Always quiet. Thorough. Reliable." You nod again. "Thank you, sir." He lifts a hand, not touching, but near enough that your skin feels it before your eyes confirm it. His fingers hover at your sleeve, then drift toward the edge of your apron. Time stretches. You take a half step back, not dramatic, just enough to reset the balance. He smiles, or tries to. It twitches at the corners. "No need to be so shy," he says, voice almost amused. "We're all friends here." You say nothing. Just lift the collar from the linen pile, place it neatly on the dressing table, and fold the discarded one with precise, unhurried movements. Your hands are steady. You've trained them to be. He watches you for a moment longer. Then, perhaps because he realizes it, or perhaps because he enjoys the illusion of letting you go, he turns back to his chair. "That will be all." You exit quickly, calmly, down the hall, down the back stairs, your pulse loud in your ears. In the scullery, Elsie is peeling potatoes. She looks up and sees your face, says nothing. Just reaches into the apron pocket beside her and pulls out a lump of soap. "Here," she says quietly, "for your hands." You take it, not because your hands are dirty, but because it gives you something to hold. And later, when the day's tasks have ended, and the bells have quieted, and the corridors are still, you sit on your bunk in the attic dormitory, rolling that soap between your palms. You think about all the collars you've folded, all the hands you've avoided, all the times you've been watched without permission, and how each of them was dismissed as nothing, because you're just a servant, and servants are expected to serve. But you also remember the half step, the moment you chose it, the small act of resistance no one will ever write down, except you, here in your bones. The hallway's darker than usual, not because the lamps are out, someone lit them just after dusk as always, but because the shadows seem to press in heavier tonight. Or maybe it's just you. You've been summoned again, late. The bell rang at 2 a.m. It was his lordship's bell. Not a dinner bell, not a breakfast tray, just a night bell. The worst kind. You wrap a shawl over your shoulders and climb the back staircase, which seems longer at this hour. Every creak sounds louder. Every gust of wind through the chimney makes your skin tighten. When you reach the door, it's ajar. Always that same deliberate inch of space. An invitation that isn't one. You knock twice. No reply. But you already know what comes next. He's sitting at the window this time, still in his evening clothes, though his cravat is loose and the top button of his shirt undone. The decanter is nearly empty. A cigar smoulders in the tray, unpuffed, half forgotten. His eyes are glassy, fixed on the black garden beyond. "I couldn't sleep," he says, as if that explains the bell. As if your sleep doesn't matter. You say nothing. He gestures toward the fireplace. It's gone out. You kneel, arrange the logs, strike a match with steady hands. The flame flickers, catches. The fire starts to crackle, casting light across the embroidered rug and his polished boots. "You're very good at that," he says, voice softer now. Most girls fumble with the matches. You stand, smooth your apron, wait for instructions. He watches you. "I miss the old days," he says suddenly. before everything became mechanical. You nod, or something like a nod, agreeing without agreeing. I suppose you don't know what I mean, he adds, almost to himself. You're young, simple life. You resist the urge to say what you're thinking, that your life is anything but simple, that navigating the moods of people like him requires more mental footwork than he performs at his gentleman's club. Instead, you say, "Would you like me to bring tea, sir?" He tilts his head, smiles faintly. Not yet. You can feel the air shift. The room is too quiet. The distance between you and the door too far. The distance between you and him not far enough. You lower your gaze. The key is to remain smaller than the moment, less threatening, less human. He steps toward you, slowly, not touching, just encroaching. You brace yourself, not for impact, for decision. Then, without warning, he turns away, picks up the decanter, holds it to the light. Empty, he mutters. Useless. A beat. Then louder. Fetch another, won't you? The Madeira. You nod. Step back. Walk with poise. Count each breath. You reach the hallway and close the door behind you. Not hard, not soft. Just definite. You lean against the panelling. Your legs are shaking. Madeira, he said, but you don't go to the cellar. You walk to the butler's pantry instead and quietly say, "His lordship requests Madeira." The butler raises an eyebrow. "At this hour?" You nod and leave it at that. You descend the stairs slowly, letting your steps land light. Your breath return to normal. The scullery is empty at this hour. Even the rats have gone quiet. The air is thick with leftover heat from the day's fires, mingled with ash and something sour in the corner bucket. You find a quiet stool near the drying rack and sit, not because you've been dismissed for the night, but because your legs won't carry you any further. You sit in silence, letting the hum of the house settle back into its bones. Then you hear it. Another bell. Not his lordship's this time. The bell marked guest chamber B. It rings once, then stops. The kind of ring that might be accidental, or might not. You look up at the board. The brass tag swings like a pendulum in slow motion, as if considering what kind of night this will be. You glance toward the hallway, and you realise something. You're not afraid of the guests. Not truly. Not like you are of what happens when the master's glass is empty and his thoughts are full. The guests may be rude, careless, entitled, but they don't know you. He does. That's what makes it worse. Elsie appears at the edge of the doorway in her nightgown and shawl. She sees your face and stops, no questions, just steps forward and says, "Tea?" You nod. She fills the kettle with a practised hand. No matches, just hot water from the leftover copper in the back. No one speaks. The silence is kind, like a blanket pulled gently over something cracked. She sits beside you and tears a crust from a roll left over from supper. You ring again. You hesitate, then nod just once. She hands you half the bread. "I hate that bell," she whispers. "The long pull. The sound it makes, like it's yanking something out of you." You both stare at the bellboard, still faintly swinging. "There's a girl at the Featherstone house," Elsie says after a pause. "Footman told me. When the master rang at night, she used to tie her apron tighter. So tight it left bruises. Thought maybe it'd keep him from trying anything." You swallow. "And did it?" you ask. Elsie shrugs. "No one knows, but she doesn't work there anymore." You sip your tea. The bitterness isn't from the leaves. Later in the attic dormitory you lie awake. The others breathe slowly around you, tucked in their blankets, dreams uncertain. You stare at the sloped ceiling. You wonder how many girls before you made that same walk up the stairs. How many heard the same bell? How many came back down feeling hollowed out? You turn over, try to sleep, and when you finally drift, It's into a dream where the bell stays silent, the doors stay closed, and the firelight is only ever warm. Up 7 creaking stairs, behind a door that sticks in the summer and warps in the winter, lies the only space in the house that belongs to you, the servants' dormitory. Well, belongs is a generous word. You share it, of course, with 4 others at the moment. Sometimes 6. Once, during Christmas season, 8 bodies crammed into this attic room with its low ceiling and one draughty window nailed halfway shut. The walls are slanted, close, like the house is gently trying to fold in on you. A single candle lights the far end, its flame flickering from the breath of someone snoring. This is where you sleep, where you hang your one extra dress on a crooked nail, where you keep your treasures in a tin under the bed. A button from your father's coat, a postcard of the seaside you've never visited, and a coin you've promised never to spend. You drop onto your bunk, which groans in protest. The mattress is straw, lumpy, and smells faintly of the person who had it before you. But it's yours now. Mostly. You've shaped the straw just enough to fit the curve of your back. You've tucked a handkerchief into the crack in the wall to stop the wind from whistling through. You lie still for a moment and just breathe. The attic always smells like wool. Wet wool in winter, dusty wool in summer. Someone's boots are drying near the stove. Someone else has hung stockings from the foot of her bed, hoping they'll be warm by morning. There's a quiet whisper from the far end. Someone reciting a prayer, or a poem, or both. This is the only time of day the house doesn't ask anything of you. When the bells are quiet, when no one needs folding, fetching, polishing, or pretending. Still, the room is far from peaceful. The roof rats scratch in the eaves, invisible but ever present. You once saw one fall through the thatch and land squarely on the footman's pillow. He screamed so loud even the butler flinched. The rat got away. The pillow didn't. Above your bunk, someone has scratched a name into the wall. Maggie, 1872. It's faint, but you run your fingers over it sometimes. You don't know who she was or where she went, but the act of carving a name feels defiant, as if to say, I was here. I lived in this narrow bed, under this dripping beam, and I mattered. You've thought of adding your name beside hers, but not yet, not until you know whether you'll stay. In the bunk next to yours, Elsie coughs, a dry, hacking sound. She's had it for weeks, and nothing seems to shake it. The cook says it's the dust. The housekeeper says it's laziness. You think it might be something deeper. You reach over and hand her your water flask. She takes it without a word, drinks, and passes it back. The window rattles in the wind. The chimney moans. And outside the city breathes, so close, yet impossibly far. In the quiet of the attic, stories unfold without voices. One of the girls, Lucy, the youngest, braids her hair by moonlight every night before bed, not because it matters for sleep, but because it's the only ritual that's truly hers. She does it slowly, carefully, and always finishes with a small blue ribbon. You've never asked where she got it, but you suspect it came from someone upstairs, maybe one of the children, maybe someone kinder. At the far end of the room, beneath the beam where spiders nest, Ada sleeps with one hand clenched under her pillow. She never says why. Some nights she mutters names in her sleep. Foreign names, half English, half lost. She says she came from somewhere near Manchester, but others whisper about Ireland. No one asks, no one dares. Every girl in this room has brought something up these stairs they're not supposed to have. A letter, a photograph, a stitched scrap of lace. One keeps a pair of shoes she's no longer allowed to wear, wrapped in cloth and hidden behind the stove. Another has a dried flower, pressed flat between Bible pages, though she hasn't been to church in years. You? You have a postcard, sent to no one, from no one. A picture of the seaside. It was found in the trash and almost burned. but you took it instead. You look at it some nights and imagine the horizon going on forever. You wonder what the air smells like beyond that painted shore. The attic is sweltering in the summer and freezing in the winter. When the frost comes, the breath of 5 girls floats in the air like spirits. You all wear socks to bed, and sometimes you share a hot brick wrapped in cloth. The bricks are meant for the ladies' bed, but one always goes missing. Somehow, no one mentions it. Even the housekeeper seems to pretend it vanishes on its own. The privacy here is fragile. One curtain strung across a bunk can create an entire world. One whisper after lights out can start a war. Once, 2 girls swapped bunks for a week just to see if the dreams changed. They didn't. And yet, these attic rooms are the only place in the house where you are you. Not a maid, not a name on a list, not a uniform, not a pair of silent shoes gliding over carpet. Here, in this cramped and slanted room, your laugh is yours. Your secrets are yours. And if someone sees you cry, they don't report it. They just pass you a handkerchief and look away. Tonight, you scratch a small mark beneath Maggie, 1872. Not your name. Not yet. Just a dot. A whisper. A possibility. Because tomorrow the bells will ring again, and the doors will open, and the house will pretend you don't exist. But here, in this sweltering, freezing, whispering room, you do. You do. The clock strikes 2 on Thursday afternoon, and with it comes a miracle whispered in the corridors like a secret prayer. Half day. Not for everyone, of course. The cook doesn't leave, nor the butler, nor the housekeeper, who only ever seems to step outside to patrol the front path. But for you, today, it means a few stolen hours away from the bells, the buckets, and the unspoken rules. You change out of your uniform quickly, swapping your apron for a second-hand cotton dress with a frayed hem and tiny flowers that have mostly faded. It once belonged to someone upstairs, the kind of someone who wore perfume and called it last season. But to you it's freedom stitched with uneven seams. You check the mirror, cracked at the corner, warped in the middle. It makes your left eye look slightly higher than your right. You fix your hair, pin it up, loosen it again, then tie it back with a ribbon, plain but clean. Elsie appears beside you, already buttoning her coat. Are you coming or not? Where to? The lane, she grins, and maybe the bakehouse. If we're lucky, they'll still have those sugared buns. You head down the back steps, not running, never running, but close to it. The air outside hits like a slap and a kiss all at once. Fresh, damp, London grey, but not quite raining. You breathe it in like food. Down the lane, past the wrought iron gates and the side alley that smells faintly of horses, the world changes. The noise of the house fades, the weight of it lifts. You and Elsie walk side by side down cobbled streets with puddles still reflecting the sky. You pass grocers shouting prices, chimney boys throwing stones, and women haggling over wilted lettuce. It's loud, messy, alive. You adore it. The bakehouse is open, barely. The girl behind the counter gives you both a knowing smile and hands over 2 slightly stale buns, half price for the little ones from the big house. You hand over your only copper, worth it. You eat on a stone wall, feet dangling, watching a dog chase a cartwheel and nearly succeed. The bun is dry at the edges, but the sugar crunches, and the middle is still soft. You lick your fingers. Imagine, Elsie says, just once, eating a whole pie, your own pie, with crust all the way round. And no one watching you chew, you add. You sit in silence for a moment, chewing slowly. Then she bumps your shoulder. Come on, let's see the lace shop. We won't buy anything, but we can pretend. So you go, and you pretend. You press your nose to the glass and admire collars and cuffs that would make her ladyship swoon. You try on hats you'll never own. You laugh with your mouth open. For a while, you aren't a maid, you're just a girl, and the streets of London, filthy, wild, wonderful, belong to you. The sun never quite shines in London, but during your half day it almost tries. By the time you and Elsie make it back to the edge of the square, your shoes are wet, your dress hem is muddy, and your cheeks ache from smiling. An unfamiliar soreness. You walk slower now. The house looms in the distance, stone grey and frowning, as if it's already noticed your return. You pass the lamp-post where the butcher's boy sometimes tips his cap. He's there today, leaning on his cart, smudged with flour and confidence. Elsie nudges you. He's looking. You roll your eyes, but she grins and calls out, "Evening, Tom." He winks. "Ladies." That one word, ladies, shouldn't mean much, but it does. You tuck it into your coat pocket like a warm stone, just something to hold on to later. Back inside, everything smells like boiled beef and polish. The world narrows again. Staircases, corridors, bells. You both pause just beyond the scullery door, letting the weight settle back onto your shoulders like damp wool. "I hate this part," Elsie whispers. "Which part?" "The one where we pretend we weren't just out there. Pretend we weren't laughing." You nod, then smooth your apron. Back in uniform, back in character. Still, as you walk toward the servants' hall, you catch yourself humming. Something you heard from a street fiddler earlier. A wild, crooked tune about a sailor and a chicken. It's absurd. You love it. Dinner is leftover stew. Again. You eat it without complaint because you're full of sugared bun and imaginary lace. The housekeeper doesn't notice your damp cuffs. Or if she does, she says nothing. The butler eyes you briefly, then moves on. Later upstairs, as you empty the drawing-room ashtrays, her ladyship remarks offhandedly that the kitchen girl smells like bread. You keep your face still, but you're already remembering the flake of crust on your lip, the sugar that clung to your glove. It was worth it. In the attic, the other maids ask how your half-day went. You lie a little. Say it rained. Say you just walked. Say the bakehouse was closed. Because if you told them how free you felt sitting on that stone wall, licking cinnamon from your thumb, it might hurt too much. But you tuck the memory deep, alongside the blue ribbon, alongside the postcard, alongside your name, which you still haven't scratched into the beam. And as you drift off to sleep, curled under a blanket that still smells faintly of starch, you carry something precious with you. The knowledge that outside the house, you're not just a servant. You're a girl who walks streets, a girl who laughs with her mouth open, a girl who, for 2 stolen hours, belonged to herself. It starts with a sniffle. Nothing grand. Just a faint catch in your throat one morning while lighting the library grate. You ignore it. Of course you do. There's too much to be done. Boots to polish. Beds to turn down. Bell cords to answer. Who has time for a cough? By the next evening, your nose is running and your voice sounds like it's been wrung out and hung over the scullery sink. You don't mention it. You tie a handkerchief around your neck, pretend it's new style, and keep working. You're not allowed to be ill. There's no doctor for you, no spare bedroom with feathered duvets and lemon broth. Illness for the family upstairs means a flurry of concern, visits from physicians in velvet gloves, and trays of stewed apples. Illness for you, a raised eyebrow from the housekeeper, a clipped warning to mind your duties, and if it gets worse, you're replaced, quietly, efficiently. You know this because it's happened before. Last spring, Margaret from the laundry room started coughing, just a little at first, then a lot. She worked through it for 3 days. On the 4th, she collapsed by the mangle. The doctor came, eventually, and left shaking his head. The next morning, her bunk was empty. By lunch, her name was gone from the ledger. No one ever said where she went, so you keep going. You scrub the floor with raw hands. You carry trays up staircases that swim beneath your feet. When you start shivering during breakfast service, you blame the draft. When your knees give out while fetching coal, you claim your bootlace was loose. Elsie notices. Of course she does. She corners you in the pantry between shifts. You look like boiled cabbage, she says softly. I'm fine, you croak. She doesn't believe you. She pulls a bottle from behind a stack of vinegar jars, a small vial of elderflower syrup someone's cousin sent from the country. 1 spoon in tea, she says, and no skipping supper. If you faint during pudding, the butler will have a fit. You thank her, then do exactly as she says. For the next 2 days, you live on borrowed energy and borrowed kindness. You move slower. You sit when no one's watching. You breathe carefully, trying not to rattle. But still, you work. Because the beds won't make themselves. The silver won't polish itself. And in this house, there's no time to die. By the 3rd day, your fever breaks, sort of. You wake in the attic with sweat clinging to your back and your throat drier than a sermon. Someone's placed a damp cloth across your forehead, and your straw mattress smells faintly of camphor. You blink, disoriented, and see Elsie asleep in the bunk next to yours, boots still on, apron crumpled in her fist. You want to thank her. You want to speak. Instead, you cough so hard you see stars. You stay in bed that morning, not because anyone told you to, but because your legs don't quite obey. A luxury, a danger. The housekeeper comes up herself, which she never does. Her eyes flick over you. 1 more day, she says, then back to your duties. And then, quieter. We can't afford a replacement this week. She leaves a wrapped biscuit on the windowsill. You break it in half. Save some for later. The girls rotate your chores in secret. Folding your linens, straightening your cot, carrying your chamber pot when the footman's not looking. It's a kindness done with pinched lips and quiet resentment. You would do the same, because down here, mercy costs time. By the next morning, you rise, wobbly but upright. Your head feels full of wool, your joints creak like the attic beams, but you lace your boots and pin your hair. Someone's left fresh water, someone else mended your apron. Badly, but with care. You descend the stairs, re-enter the corridor like a ghost learning how to walk again. The house greets you with the usual welcome. Smoke from the kitchen, brass under your fingertips, the bitter sting of vinegar in your lungs. But everything feels sharper now, like seeing the world through a cracked window you hadn't noticed before. Because being sick, even just briefly, reminds you of a cruel truth. You are replaceable. Entirely. Instantly. The house runs without you. The bells still ring. The food still cooks. The floors still gleam. It doesn't miss you. It barely notices your absence. And yet, someone folded your blanket. Someone saved you the crust of a roll. Someone kept your name from being crossed out. You return to your tasks. You carry the trays. You wash the floors. And no one says welcome back. But someone slides you an extra spoonful of pudding that night at supper. You eat it slowly, letting the sweetness coat your sore throat. Because in a place where no one has time to fall apart, that spoonful is a kind of balm. A reminder that even in a world built to forget you, someone remembered. You're polishing a teacup when it happens. Not a crash, not a scream, just a soft clink. The tiniest chip on the rim, barely visible, a slip of the cloth, a tremble in your hand from last night's fever. You freeze. You stare at it like it might heal itself if you just wish hard enough. But it doesn't. It stays chipped, and your stomach drops straight through the stone floor. It's her ladyship's favourite cup. You know this not because she ever said so, but because she always chooses it. Pale pink, gold trim, rim worn smooth by her lipstick. It has a tiny floral vine curling just beneath the handle. A gift from her sister, supposedly. the sister she no longer speaks to. You consider hiding it, swapping it, pretending it never existed. But you know better. The housekeeper would notice. The butler might notice. She would definitely notice. So you carry it, all the way in the butler's pantry, both hands, head down. You show it to him. He lifts it delicately, squints, turns it under the light. Then he says nothing, just makes a notation in his leather ledger, the one with names and faults and final straws, and hands it back to you. Put it in the drawer marked damaged, he says, cool as butter. You do. And just like that, your name now lives beside a chipped cup. You wait for the fallout all day. Maybe you'll be dismissed. Maybe you'll be reassigned. Maybe the housekeeper will strip you of your best shift and replace it with silver-polished duty for a month. But nothing happens. Not yet. And that's somehow worse. Because now you live with it. The knowledge that you slipped. That the house noticed. That it said nothing. Which means it's waiting. You can feel the shift in how the under-butler glances at you when you pass. The hesitation before you're given the better tray. The way your name appears last on the daily chore list now, penciled in faint graphite instead of ink. That's how it starts. You've seen it before. The slow unravelling. First you're passed over for errands upstairs. Then you're given the mending basket with the torn linens. Then someone forgets to save you a plate at supper. Then the housekeeper stops making eye contact. Until one day, you come down the stairs to find your trunk packed, your name crossed off, a footman carrying your boots to the door like a package no one remembers ordering. It's the silent firing, the polite vanishing, and the chipped cup is the first domino. So that night, you stay late in the pantry. You polish every cup, every spoon, every fork. You scrub the butler's favourite decanter until it gleams like a jewel. You straighten the sideboard, refill the sugar tin, wipe the silver tray, though it's already clean. And when no one's watching, you open the drawer marked damaged. You stare at the cup. You lift it, trace the chip. Then you wrap it in soft cloth, tuck it behind the other cast-offs, and whisper, "You weren't the only one who cracked." You go to sleep with that chipped cup in your mind, balanced, fragile, waiting. And sure enough, the next morning your name's missing from the wash rota. Not crossed out, just gone. No assignment, no duties listed, no mention at all. You glance at the list twice, thrice. Your heart stutters. Elsie sees your face and looks over your shoulder. She doesn't speak. Just frowns, then pats your arm in a way that says, "I'm sorry," without making a scene. This is how it begins. The quiet erasure. The invisible axe. By mid-morning you're reassigned to the coal scuttle, punishment post. You haul buckets from the cellar to the grates. Heavy, sharp-edged, dirty. Your hands ache. The dust seeps through your apron and into your lungs. No one thanks you. No one looks at you. The housekeeper passes you on the stairs, doesn't nod, doesn't blink. You want to scream, but you smile instead. Because now you understand something deeply, painfully true. You don't get fired for mistakes. You get fired for being noticed making one. And you were noticed. You're pouring coal into the drawing room fireplace when the master enters. Unexpected, still in his dressing robe, humming something off-key. You stand instantly, brush the dust from your skirt, avert your eyes. He waves a hand. "You there? What's your name?" You freeze. It's not a question you're meant to answer. You're not meant to have a name in this room. "Emma, sir." He pauses as if trying it out. Have we had you long?" You open your mouth, close it. Finally, "1.5 years, sir." He nods vaguely. Loyal, then. He walks away before you can reply. You stare into the fireplace, the coals red and flickering. You wonder how long you have left. Later that day, you hear whispers. Someone in the parlour mistook a sideboard for a liquor cabinet, and knocked over a porcelain vase, her ladyship's second favourite, a clean break, 3 pieces. The footman took the blame, but the housemaid who left the door unlocked is being reviewed. Suddenly the chipped cup feels smaller, just one crack in a house full of fractures. That evening, after the trays are cleared and the bells have stopped ringing, you return to the pantry, alone, again. You open the damaged drawer, lift the cup, and slip it into your apron pocket. You walk to the scullery door, open it just wide enough, and toss the cup into the coal bin. Not as defiance, not even out of guilt, but as closure. Because if you're going to be punished for a flaw, you may as well decide where it lands. You wash your hands, put your apron away, and prepare for tomorrow, whatever it brings. Because the chipped part of you, it didn't break, it just sharpened. The trunk appears before breakfast, not yours, hers, Lady Evelyn, the eldest daughter, 19 years old, with a laugh like spun sugar and a reputation for headaches that seem to strike just before embroidery lessons. You've pressed her gloves, you've mended her stockings, you once fetched her shawl in the rain and were thanked with half a nod. Now, her trunk sits in the entry hall, half packed, the lid yawning open like a secret too big to close. No one knows why it's there. No one's told the staff anything. But in a house like this, news travels faster than bells. Elsie corners you in the scullery. "She's leaving," she whispers, eyes wide. "Running off with someone, that new piano instructor, the one with a ridiculous moustache." You raise an eyebrow. "He's old enough to be her father." Elsie grins. "Exactly. Her mother hates him. She's probably halfway to Dover by now." You don't believe it. Not at first. But then you see the lady herself, fluttering down the staircase in a walking dress far too plain for dinner and far too fine for travel. Her cheeks are flushed, her gloves are on the wrong hands, and her eyes don't meet anyone's. The butler follows her with lips pressed tight, holding a note in one gloved hand. The housekeeper is already in the background, hovering by the ledger with an expression carved in stone. It's happening. And when scandal unfolds upstairs, it trickles down. The rest of the morning is chaos disguised as order. You're sent to the guest room to straighten the linens, which really means remove anything Lady Evelyn might have left behind. A hairpin, a ribbon, a torn page from a letter that smells faintly of lavender and regret. You find a handkerchief balled up beneath the pillow, embroidered with her initials. You fold it. You hand it off to the undermaid, who doesn't meet your eye. The trunk disappears by noon. Her name is no longer on the bellboard by supper. No one speaks of her. But by midnight, everyone is whispering that she took the wrong carriage, that she left without shoes, that the master threw a decanter at the wall when he found the letter, that her ladyship fainted and had to be revived with smelling salts. You don't know what's true, but what's real is the way everything shifts after someone goes. There's a gap, not just in the hallway, but in the way people move, like they're all standing slightly to one side, unsure where the shadow used to fall. And downstairs, it's no better. With one daughter gone, the servants are reshuffled. The second housemaid is promoted. The scullery girl is pulled up to help in the laundry. And you? You're told you'll be assisting in the upstairs parlours. Just for now, they say. Just until things settle. But nothing ever truly settles in this house. Because when someone elopes, someone else is dismissed. When one door slams shut, another one opens, and someone is standing too close when it does. By the next morning, her name has vanished. From the place cards, from the laundry list, from the tea rota. Lady Evelyn has become a whisper-shaped absence, a gap in the house that everyone skirts around but no one dares fill. Her bedroom is already locked. Her portraits, previously hung in the stairwell with all the daughters arranged in soft pastels, have been quietly removed. Just like that, she's gone. And you've been promoted, temporarily they say, But in this house, temporary can last a lifetime, or end by supper. Your new post takes you upstairs more often now. You bring flower arrangements to the parlour, fold music programmes in the drawing room. Once, you're even asked to prepare a dress for her ladyship. You touch lace worth more than your wages, and the pins are so fine they bend in your fingers like hair. But it's not all glamour, because now you're closer to the drama, closer to the anger. You see her ladyship pacing the garden path, gloves clenched in one fist. You hear the master slam a door so hard the china rattled 2 rooms away. The housekeeper hasn't smiled in 4 days. Even the butler's voice has a brittle edge. And when someone disappears like Evelyn did, someone must pay. That someone is the 3rd footman. He's dismissed suddenly. No notice. No reason given. Rumours fly like soot. He carried the letters. He helped her into the carriage. He saw something he shouldn't. No one knows. But one moment he's polishing boots in the hallway. The next he's gone. Trunk packed, coat collar turned up, boots still damp from the morning's rain. You watch from the side passage as he walks down the path, not looking back. He doesn't wave. He doesn't blink. And you wonder what he saw, what he said, what he didn't. That night in the servants' hall the mood is quiet. No one wants stew. No one jokes. Even Elsie eats in silence, pushing a carrot around her plate. Finally she says, "Do you think she's happy?" You know who she means. You shrug. "I think she wanted to be free." Elsie snorts. "Then she shouldn't have worn white silk shoes in the rain." You smile, but it fades quickly, because what none of you say aloud is this: if they can vanish their own daughter, what chance do we have? You return to your bunk that night feeling taller somehow, but not safer. You've stepped closer to the heat of the flame, and the warmth is intoxicating. But warmth can blister too. Still, before sleep takes you, you reach up to the attic beam and scratch something next to Maggie's mark. Not your name. Not yet. Just another dot. A second whisper. Because someone might be watching, and someone else might be next. The annual staff ball is not for people like you. At least that's what everyone says. It's not in any handbook, and it's never mentioned out loud until just before it happens. But once a year, the family host a ball in the upstairs ballroom. And on that same night, after the last dance, after the last guest has staggered into a carriage, the servants are allowed their own version. Not in the ballroom, of course. You wouldn't want to get footprints on the parquet. The staff ball takes place in the servants' hall. Tables pushed aside, a few chairs lined up around the walls. Someone brings in a string quartet from the Muse, a trio now, ever since the viola girl ran off with a chimney sweep. And somehow, for a few brief hours, the rules bend. You're allowed to change. Not into anything new, mind you, but into your best. You choose the dress you wear on half days, pin your hair differently, rub a bit of rose salve into your cheeks, and hope the candlelight is kind. Elsie lends you her ribbon, you lend her your brooch. Downstairs the boys have smuggled in cider and jam tarts. The cook actually smiles, once, and the butler, while still stiff as old pastry, nods when someone greets him. That alone feels like a benediction. You take your place near the edge of the room, smoothing your skirt with one hand and nursing a teacup with the other. The footman, Thomas, is already dancing. He's taller than you remembered. Or maybe it's just the confidence. His sleeves are rolled, and his waistcoat is a little too tight, but he's smiling. And you realise you've never seen him smile without being told to. Someone plays a reel, then a waltz. Someone else opens the window, letting in a breeze that smells of coal smoke and late summer roses. And for one glorious hour the servants stop whispering about who ranks where and start laughing like they have nothing to lose. You find yourself dancing. Not with Thomas, not at first. With someone else, a A stable hand, maybe. You don't know his name, but his hands are warm, and he doesn't step on your feet. Then someone pulls you into another dance, a spin, a turn, and suddenly you're laughing, not politely, not behind your hand, openly. Elsie twirls past with her arms raised and shouts, "We'll all be sacked tomorrow." And maybe you will be, but not tonight. Tonight you're not a maid or a number or a whispered warning. You're just a girl in a borrowed ribbon, spinning under low ceilings and flickering candlelight, with the hem of your skirt brushing the world you never quite get to touch. Midway through the third waltz, the candles start to burn low. Someone replaces them with stubs from the kitchen. The wax drips like melted snow down the iron holders, pooling in little white lakes along the edges of the servants' hall. You don't mind. In fact, the dimness makes it better, as if this night is a secret, tucked away in shadows where the house can't reach you. Thomas finally crosses the floor. He's red-faced from dancing, but bold now, buoyed by cider and celebration. He gives a little bow, half sincere, half foolish, and says, "May I?" You hesitate just long enough to make him sweat. Then you smile and nod. He's not the best dancer. His hand is a little too firm on your waist, and he forgets which foot to lead with. But he grins the whole time, and you find yourself grinning too. A real smile, the kind that stretches all the way to your ribs. "You clean up well," he says. You raise an eyebrow. "Better than your polishing," he laughs. "Almost." You dance for 2 songs, 3, and then the music slows, the cider jug runs dry, and someone's roast potato falls onto the floor and is promptly eaten by the kitchen cat. That makes everyone laugh so hard the housekeeper herself peeks in, just once, to raise an eyebrow and vanish. She doesn't stop the music. Even she knows this night matters, because this is the only time everyone is equal. For a few hours there are no upstairs, no downstairs, just warm cider and sore feet and too tight boots, and someone in the corner playing a love song they wrote themselves on a cracked violin. You step outside for air. The kitchen door creaks shut behind you, and the garden is bathed in moonlight. Pale, soft, unreal. You sit on the low stone wall and look up. The stars are faint behind the London haze, but they're there. You count them. 1, 2, 3, and then you feel a coat slip across your shoulders. Thomas sits beside you, says nothing, just leans back and sighs. "Reckon they'll give us a raise after tonight?" You snort. "Only if we find a way to dance while polishing silver." He chuckles, then goes quiet. You sit together in the hush of candle smoke and night breezes, letting the moment stretch. Eventually, the clock in the hall chimes once, then twice. Midnight. The spell begins to break. You stand, shrug off the coat, hand it back with a nod. Inside, the chairs are already being put away, the crumbs swept, the ribbons untied. By morning, the house will pretend it never happened. The tables will gleam, the bells will ring. The under-butler will frown at the polish on your shoes and ask where your starch went. But for now, for just a moment longer, you are someone else. Someone free. The first sign comes at breakfast. The place setting is short 1 cup. Not yours, not the staff's. One from upstairs. Her ladyship's father, the old master of the house, is absent. No announcement, no warning, just silence. The butler says nothing. The housekeeper doesn't lift her eyes. But something in the way the napkin is folded tighter than usual makes your stomach twist. You don't ask. You just keep moving. By midday, the atmosphere has thickened, like the house is holding its breath. The hallway bells ring less. The doors upstairs remain shut. A doctor arrives, coat flapping, led silently up the main staircase by the butler. You hear his footsteps overhead for an hour, then he leaves. No one speaks as he passes through the servants' hall. He doesn't take tea. He doesn't take his hat off. He just mutters something under his breath and vanishes into the fog. By afternoon, black cloth appears, draped over mirrors in the drawing room, fastened neatly with pins by the first housemaid, her mouth pressed into a line. Still, no one says the word, but you know. The cook begins boiling bones for broth, as if feeding the family might somehow chase away grief. The younger maids go silent. Even the footman who always whistles while carrying coal has stopped. Elsie comes to find you in the linen press, where you're folding napkins for a supper that may no longer happen. "It's him, isn't it?" she whispers. You nod. She doesn't ask how you know. She doesn't need to. When a house grieves, it changes temperature. The walls hold a chill that wasn't there yesterday. The hearths burn lower. The candles flicker in strange rhythms. And even though your job doesn't change, everything feels different. You're sent to retrieve the master's coat from his wardrobe. Not the new one, the one he wore every Christmas. Dark navy with worn edges and a slight stain on the hem from a wine spill no one dared mention. You lay it across the bed carefully, smooth the sleeves, button it halfway, just like he used to. In his absence, the rooms feel too big, the furniture too polished, the silence too full. When the lady passes you in the hall, she doesn't look up, but she's wearing gloves, indoors. That's when you're sure. The old master has died, and now everything will shift. By the time the clock chimes 6, the word has reached every corner of the house, even if no one has spoken it aloud. The master is dead, and while the family mourns in silence upstairs, downstairs becomes a blur of motion and protocol. Mourning in a house this size isn't just sadness, it's a logistical avalanche. The black armbands come out of the locked drawer in the housekeeper's room, pressed and folded as if they've been waiting all year. You're handed one without ceremony, told to pin it to your sleeve with a straight face and straighter spine. You pass Elsie on the stairs. She's crying but pretending she's not. "I only ever saw him twice," she sniffs, "but it's just, he was always here." You understand what she means. Grief in a house like this is not about closeness, it's about permanence. The old master had become part of the building, like the balustrade or the ticking clock, and now that he's gone, everything feels just slightly off-kilter. Even the rugs seem to lie differently. The funeral is scheduled quickly. Upstairs they'll host a quiet reception. Downstairs it means chaos. Every dish must be perfect, every plate scrubbed, every servant in black, though not full mourning of course. That's reserved for blood family. You spend the morning ironing crepe ribbons. You spend the afternoon polishing silver that no one will eat off of. You spend the evening watching carriages arrive one after another, cloaked in fog, as grieving gentlemen step out with cravats twisted in sorrow. None of them look at you, but you watch them, each one. Because each man stepping through that door is a reminder of the world beyond this house, a world that can shake things loose, even here. And then comes the reading of the will. You don't attend, of course. No one from downstairs does. But the silence that follows is deafening. A bell rings. The butler enters the drawing room and closes the door behind him. When he returns, hours later, his face is pale. The new master has inherited the estate. But there's a but. You hear it whispered in the pantry, in the hallway, in the scullery where the pots soak quietly in grey water. There are debts, big ones, larger than anyone thought. Servants will be dismissed. Expenses cut. The second coach sold. And suddenly, the morning becomes something else. Fear. You lie awake that night in your bunk, ribbon still pinned to your sleeve. You trace the outline of the wooden beam above you, where Maggie's mark has now been joined by your own. The house creaks in its sleep. You wonder how many of you it will remember in the morning. The list goes up by candlelight, tacked to the notice board in the servants' hall, a single sheet. No preamble, no ceremony, just names, written in the housekeeper's thin, precise hand. The ink is dark and fresh. You can still smell it. Reductions. That's the word whispered at breakfast. No one eats much. The toast is cold, and the jam, usually rationed carefully, goes untouched. Even Elsie is quiet, staring at her spoon like it might reveal her fate. You wait. You don't want to be the first to look, but eventually someone breaks. The underfootman crosses the room, leans in, squints at the page. Doesn't speak, just walks out, straight-backed, lips pressed tight. Another follows, then another. You go last. Your name is not on the list. You stare anyway, reading the names of those who are. One by one, the second housemaid, the older scullery boy, the stableman with the crooked wrist, 2 kitchen girls, Elsie. Your stomach drops. She's still seated, eyes wide, waiting. You don't know how to say it, so you don't. You sit beside her instead. Slide your hand onto hers. She looks up, sees your face, and knows. There's a moment between the two of you, quiet, breathless, where the house seems to hush just for her grief. Then she stands. "I'll pack." That's all she says. You follow her to the attic dormitory, even though it's not allowed. Help her fold her dress, tie her boots, wrap a little bar of lavender soap in a spare apron. She doesn't cry. Not even once. Just moves like someone counting the last of something precious. Before she goes, she kneels by her bunk, scratches a second mark beside the first. "Might be back," she mutters, "if the new master marries." You don't believe it. Neither does she. But it helps to say it out loud. When she hugs you, it's quick and tight, like she's afraid she'll change her mind. Then she's gone. Down the stairs, out the servant's door. No carriage, no farewell, no thanks. Just one more name erased from the rhythm of the house. And now everything feels fragile. You used to feel invisible. Now you feel expendable. There's talk of more cuts. You volunteer for everything. Extra shifts, kitchen duty, even chamber pot duty. Anything to prove your worth. The cook calls you too eager, but you see the way her hands shake when she counts the eggs. Everyone is afraid, and fear changes a house faster than grief. The days blur. Breakfast, chores, bells, polishing, lifting, scrubbing. You move faster now, not from pride, but from self-preservation. One mistake and you could be next. Even the butler seems nervous. He starts double-checking the accounts, locking the wine cellar twice, and snapping at footmen who whistle in the halls. You hear the under-housemaid sobbing one morning behind the linen press. No one dares go to her. The house feels colder, not from the weather, it's still early autumn, still warm in the garden, but from upstairs. The new master has changed the schedule. Meals are earlier, windows are to remain shut, and the library is now strictly off limits to all staff unless summoned. He doesn't speak to you, not directly, but you've seen him once or twice. His shoes are shinier than his father's, his voice lower, his eyes harder, and then one evening, just before supper, he sends for you. No explanation. The bell rings, your name is spoken. You wash your hands 3 times and straighten your apron before climbing the back stairs to the drawing room. He's alone, standing by the fire, sipping brandy with a frown that seems carved into his face. "You were Maggie's replacement, yes?" Your mouth goes dry. "Yes, sir." He nods, not looking at you. "You've done well." You almost exhale. Then, "But I don't need a full household anymore." Your breath freezes. "I've let go of the others," he continues, "but I need one who can adapt, who can do more." He turns now, his gaze resting on you like a ledger entry. "You'll do the work of 2. Not a question. You nod, because what else can you do? "Good," he says, turning back to the fire. "Dismissed." And that's that. You leave with your heart thudding. not sure whether to cry or feel lucky. By the end of the week, 4 more servants are gone. The hallways grow quieter. No more laughter behind the scullery door. No more midnight cider. No more Elsie. Even the cat disappears. You find yourself speaking less, smiling less, sleeping with one hand tucked beneath your pillow, clutching the list of names you copied in pencil on the back of a scrap menu, just in case you forget who used to be here. You are still here, but it feels less like belonging and more like surviving. And deep down, a part of you wonders, how long until even that is taken away? Weeks pass, and then one morning the fog lifts, literally. The sun creeps through the high kitchen windows in soft slanted rays, catching on the dust motes and copper pans. You almost don't recognize it. Warmth. You stand at the scullery basin peeling apples, alone. The kitchen, once bustling, now echoes. The cook left 2 days ago, quietly, without fuss. Just didn't come down one morning. You suspect she was too proud to be dismissed, or too tired to wait for it. You took over. No one told you to. You simply woke up and started boiling porridge. You know the recipe by heart. That morning, the new master hosts a breakfast meeting. A few gentlemen in stiff collars arrive with briefcases and stiff nods. You bring in a tray, toast, kippers, tea, and serve without being noticed. But you hear them. Estate sales, creditors, downsizing. One man mutters something about auctioning the horses, and you nearly drop the tray. So it's true. This house, this world, is dissolving. You return to the servants' quarters. Your boots echo on the stone stairs. It's still early, and the dormitory's empty. Most beds stripped, trunks gone. The row of wooden pegs, once heavy with coats and scarves, now hangs bare, save one. Yours. You sit on your bunk. Run your hand across the carved beam above, the one filled with initials. Yours now joined by Elsie's, Maggie's, Thomas's, even the scullery boy's shaky little R. You touch each mark, one by one. It feels like pressing on a bruise. In the pantry, you find a forgotten scrap of paper, part of an old delivery list. On the back, you write a new name. Yours, the full one. Not just the nickname used by the others. It feels strange to see it there, like reclaiming something you forgot was yours. Later, you sneak into the library. You're not supposed to, not anymore. But the fire has burned out and the room is empty. You step inside. The air smells of dust and leather and winter sunlight. You find the globe near the window and give it a spin. Your finger hovers over cities you've never seen. Cairo, Lisbon, Boston. Could you go? Will they even take someone like you? You close your eyes and listen. In the quiet, you realize something remarkable. You're not afraid. Not anymore. The worst already happened, and you're still standing. The house may fall. The master may sell the silver and silence the halls. But you remain. That evening the sun lingers longer than it should, stretching golden light across the corridors, spilling through the transom windows like an apology. You light the hallway lamps alone. No footman to do it, no chatter behind you, just the soft click of the striker and the hiss of gas. As the flame flickers to life, you realize this house no longer feels like his, not the old master's, not the new one's either. Not really. It feels hollow, and maybe ready. You pass the grand staircase on your way to the dining room and pause. The chandelier above is gone, dusty. One of the crystal drops is missing, broken weeks ago, never replaced. But the dining table is still laid, one place. The new master doesn't entertain anymore. He eats alone, if he eats at all. You set down the tray gently. Beef stew and bread. You made it. No cook left to do so. You consider knocking, but don't. Instead, you turn back. In the main hall you stop at the coat rack. Your old wool coat still hangs there, a little threadbare at the cuffs. It used to itch something terrible. Now it smells like stone and soap and time. You pull it on, then without a word you walk out the front door. No one stops you, no bell rings, no master shouts. You walk past the fountain, now dry and cracked, past the garden wall where Elsie once tripped chasing a hedgehog, past the tree where Maggie carved her initial before the frost came. The gate is open, no one left to lock it, and you don't look back. You follow the lane as it curves into the distance, the crunch of gravel beneath your boots the only sound. Each step lighter, each breath freer. You have no reference for what comes next, no letter of recommendation, no saved wages, no map. But you have something else. You know how to endure, you know how to work, to listen, to wait, to read a room before entering, to make yourself invisible when needed and memorable when it matters. You know what it is to be small in a world that rarely notices, and you know how to leave that world behind. The road ahead is long, but it is yours, and for the first time you can feel it, thrumming in your ribs like a bell struck softly in the dark. You're not a servant anymore. You're becoming. The road fades behind you, and the evening sky turns to velvet. There's no clock now, no bell to mark your hours, just the hush of wind in the hedgerows and the steady rhythm of your breath. You walk until your legs ache, then find a patch of moss beneath a crooked tree. You sit down slowly, wrap your coat tighter, and tilt your head to the stars. They're faint at first, scattered pinpricks, but as your eyes adjust, they multiply. Soft clusters, familiar patterns, shapes you only saw through attic windows now stretching unbroken above you. Somewhere far behind, the grand house still stands. Its shutters creak, its hearths smoulder, but its walls no longer contain you, and that thought brings peace. You close your eyes, feel the night gather around your shoulders like a blanket. No footsteps to chase, no list to fear, just breath in and out, in and out. If sleep finds you here beneath the stars, let it be the kind that restores, not erases. Let your dreams be filled with gardens untrimmed, kitchens that smell of cinnamon, and laughter you don't have to hush. You've served enough. Now let the world serve you.